They say the galaxy is eternal war. But what happens when the most feared warrior from another universe steps into it? Imagine the deathly silence of a void ship, its cathedral hull trembling under the distant thunder of orbital bombardment. Inside, a towering figure stands before the flickering holographic map of a dying world. His breath, mechanical, steady, commanding, cuts through the incense-thick air. The Vox grill hums, and every space marine present kneels instinctively. Not from protocol, from fear. For this is not a chapter master of the Adeptus Astartes. This is Lord Vader, the Dark Lord of the Sith, now commanding a space marine legion under the banner of the Imperium of Man. In this universe, the Force bends to the will of the Emperor, and Vader's wrath is no longer confined to one galaxy. It has found a new empire to serve, or to conquer. Before we descend into this unholy alliance between the Emperor of mankind and the Dark Lord of the Sith, take a moment to strengthen the Legion. Like this transmission, subscribe to the channel, and let the machine's spirit of the algorithm know that you stand with us in this forbidden imagining of war, faith, and power. The landing platform trembles beneath the weight of the impossible. Vader's ship settles with the quiet authority of a god descending to a mortal world, its angular hull whispering with heat and memory. No banners of allegiance mark it, no symbols of the Imperium, chaos, or Xenos only, the reflection of Terra's polluted sky sliding across its armor like oil on black glass. Around the perimeter, squads of the Adeptus Custodes form a silent circle, their auramite armor catching the grey light, each one radiating the power of 10,000 mortal soldiers. Their guardian spears remain steady, but their minds strained to resist even psychic corruption quiver with unease. This was not a demon. This was something far stranger. When the ramp lowers, steam rolls outward, carrying with it the scent of scorched metal and sterilized air. Vader steps forward. Each stride releases a metallic hiss, each exhale a slow death rattle through the Vox grill. He surveys the custodians with the calm of a man who has seen gods bleed. Beneath his helm, his eyes, what remains of them, register nothing of awe or fear. The Force hums faintly in the air, unseen yet palpable, brushing against the psychic wards of the Imperial defenders like a cold hand through fire. Even the Emperor's palace seems to take notice. Its vast mechanisms groan as if remembering some ancient promise of vengeance. Identify yourself. A custodian commands, his voice low, ritualistic, as though speaking to a relic. Vader says nothing. The answer does not belong to language. His silence is its own declaration, an unholy mixture of discipline and disdain. The custodian takes a single step forward, spear-angled but stops. Something unseen presses against him, a weight like gravity turned malicious. Dust and ash lift from the platform. Vox units scream static. The air folds inward as if inhaled by an invisible lung. Then, just as swiftly, the pressure releases. Vader lowers his hand. No words, no gesture of aggression, only control. High above, the inquisitorial observation decks erupt in murmurs. The Vox channels fill with 100 overlapping theories. A Xenos construct, a lost relic of the dark age of technology, a warp-lessed weapon of heretical design. Some whisper a name long forbidden Sargmago's Belisarius call. Others suggest a trick of the ruinous powers. Yet the ship remains inert, pure in its defiance of chaos. Untainted by the warp dot, Vader pauses at the edge of the platform, where the air of terror meets the artificial atmosphere of his vessel. The wind here tastes of industry and incense, the eternal smoke of manufacturer mingling with the sacred fumes burned for the emperor. It smells of decay sanctified, of devotion that has forgotten its purpose. He looks toward the distant horizon, where the golden throne sits buried beneath the crust of temples and cathedrals. Even through walls of steel and sanctified circuitry, he can feel it a beacon of psychic fire, the tortured heartbeat of a god-king. For the first time, the force within him stirs with something unfamiliar. Recognition, not of the man upon the throne, but of the pain that sustains him. Both bound to machines, both trapped between life and death, both monuments to failure. The irony is not lost on him. Perhaps this world, so ruled by faith and fear, will understand him better than his own ever did. A transport skimmer approaches, emblazoned with the twin-headed Aquila. From its ramp descends an inquisitoribus of deep crimson, a rosette gleaming at his chest. His name is Lord Inquisitor Halbrecht Ordo Xenos, though his jurisdiction means little in this moment. His eyes betray both courage and calculation. "You stand upon holy terror, Halbrecht," says voice firm, despite the static tremor in the vox. "Identify your allegiance, stranger, or be unmade where you stand." Vader turns toward him, slow and deliberate, the mechanical rasp of his breath echoing like a ritual drumbeat. The black lenses of his mask lock onto Halbrecht's face, and the for silent ancient cold. The Inquisitor stiffens, as though his very blood has turned to glass. The custodians react, weapons half-raised, uncertain if they've just witnessed an act of blasphemy or a miracle. "I seek the one they call Emperor," Vader finally says, his voice deep, distorted, heavy with loss. "He and I have much to discuss." The words hang in the air, impossible, sacrilegious. The VoxNet floods with alarm sigils. Halbrecht struggles to speak, torn between protocol and survival. Behind him, the custodians shift their stance not to attack, but to shield. Above them all, the Astronomicon flickers once more, its light bending in acknowledgement. Somewhere deep within the palace, servitors pause mid the Emperor's own light for a fraction of a heartbeat. Dimzen, Steadies. The impossible visitor stands unmoved. The air grows heavy, like the pause between lightning and thunder. The air within the imperial palace hums with sanctified machinery and ancient despair. Beneath its vaulted ceilings, where light filters through incense smoke like liquid gold, Vader walks as though through a cathedral built to honor suffering. The floor beneath his boots gleams like obsidian, worn by centuries of kneeling pilgrims and the march of divine executioners. Each step echoes with the hollow finality of a sentence being pronounced. Around him, the Adeptus Custodes advance in perfect unison, their auramite armor catching the torchlight in rhythmic flashes. They are living statues of devotion, and yet even they hesitate when the sound of his breathing fills the corridor, the rasping mechanical cadence of a soul that has long forgotten how to die. The deeper they descend, the more the air thickens. It smells of oil and incense, of sanctified decay, of something ancient kept alive by sheer will. Along the walls, frescoes depict humanity's triumphs and failures, rendered in gold and blood. The Emperor's victories against the traitor legions, the burning of Prospero, the siege of Terra, scenes painted not as history, but as liturgy. Vader studies them in silence, and for a fleeting instant, he almost recognizes the madness behind them, the worship of control disguised as salvation. His fingers flexed unconsciously, the black gauntlet creaking. He has known that kind of faith before, the kind that demands everything and gives only purpose in return. The custodians speak only once. "You are to walk in silence before the throne," says the leader, his voice modulated through a Vox filter, reverent but firm. "No mortal voice may break the sanctum's hymn." Vader inclines his head slightly. "Then we are alike," he replies, his tone low, distorted, yet almost amused. It is the first human sound in the corridor in 1,000 years that carries no prayer in it. As they approach the inner gates, the walls begin to tremble with the heartbeat of the golden throne. The sound is not one of life, but of machinery older than memory, conduits pulsing with psychic current, gears grinding in rhythms of pain and necessity. The force gathers around Vader like a storm front pressing against a dam. He can feel the Emperor now, not as a presence, but as a gravitational wound in the universe. A sun trapped within iron, an agony so vast it has become doctrine. Every mind within reach of that light has been shaped by it, bent in worship until worship became nature. Servitors line the hallway, flesh grafted to bronze and faith. Their mechanical limbs twitch in his passing, as though the simple act of proximity disrupts their holy programming. Mechanicus priests chant from behind censers, their metallic voices rising and falling in Binharic hymns, an attempt to drown the unfamiliar resonance that walks among them. Vader pays them no heed. Their fear is a language he understands. When the final gate comes into view, it dwarfs all imagination. Its surface is covered in carvings billions of faces, all screaming toward the center where the imperial Aquila spreads its wings in judgment. The air before it feels heavy, like the pause between breaths. Here the custodians halt. "This is where your path ends," their leader says. Vader steps forward alone. The force crackles faintly in the silence, a pulse of dark gravity against the psychic tide pouring from beyond the gate. He kneels, not in submission, but in understanding. Beneath the armor, beneath the breath, beneath the years of servitude and rage, he recognizes the reflection, a being once human, now bound to power that has consumed everything else. The Emperor is not God. He is will unbroken, purpose without mercy. Vader bows not to worship, but to mourn. And in that silence, something stirs. A pressure in the air, vast and ancient. The Vox hymns falter for a heartbeat. The custodians shift, as if sensing a tremor no mortal should. Vader feels it too, not sound, not sight, but presence. A thought that is not his own, brushing against his mind like a dying star. For a fraction of an instant, he feels seen, not as a warrior, not as a machine, but as a mirror. Then the silence fractures. A sound approaches from the far end of the hall, steady and deliberate, neither custodian nor priest. Metal scraping stone. A rhythm too precise to be human, too slow to be mechanized. The air ripples, as though reality itself recoils from what walks toward them. Vader rises. His hand drifts toward his saber, though he does not ignite it. Whatever comes bears no malice, only inevitability. The throne's judgment, it seems, does not speak in words. The light of the throne burns without shadow, yet somehow the air within it feels colder than the void between stars. Vader stands at the threshold, motionless, his black armor reflecting the golden luminescence like oil cast upon holy fire. He feels the weight of countless eyes, unseen, unblinking, eternal, watching from every corner of this sanctum. The Adeptus Custodes remain at their posts, frozen statues of devotion, but even they seem diminished beneath this radiance. This is not light meant to illuminate. It is light meant to blind. Then, from within that brilliance, something moves. Not a man, not a ghost, an echo of both. The Sigillite's echo, robed in flowing data cloth, its patterns shifting with streams of ancient Binharic code. Upon its chest gleams the imperial seal, half machine, half memory, glowing like an ember that refuses to die. Its voice emerges not from lungs, but from the vibration of reality itself, resonant, layered, and weary. You should not be, it says, and the words ripple through the air like thunder muted by reverence. Yet you are. Why? Vader says nothing at first. The rasp of his breathing answers in its own rhythm, harsh against the hymn of the throne's power. The force here is different, not dead, but chained. It writhes beneath the Emperor's will, a vast sea frozen by faith. When Vader reaches into it, it resists him, curling back like a living thing. He feels himself drawn instead toward the great light beyond the echo, where the Emperor endures. His instincts whisper to fight it, to dominate it as he once did the weak and the faithless. But that instinct falters. Here power feels meaningless. Every act of control collapses before the weight of belief. The echo glides closer, its movements fluid, almost mournful. Are you relic or revelation? It asks. The galaxy remembers many horrors that claimed the name of Savior. The words carry no malice, only the exhaustion of an empire that has seen too many gods fall. Vader's hand twitches toward his belt, where the hilt of his lightsaber waits like a caged serpent. For a heartbeat, the crimson crystal within hums to life, sensing his doubt. A ghost of red glows beneath his glove. The custodians flinch, weapons ready, but Vader lowers his hand. He knows the truth of this place. Violence would be sacrilege, not victory. I am neither, he says at last, voice low, distorted, yet almost human. I came seeking one who understands what it means to burn for eternity. The Sigillite's echo studies him with eyes made of starlight and static. Then you have found him, it murmurs, gesturing toward the heart of the radiance. But beware, his fire does not warm. It consumes. The words settle in the air like ash. Vader steps forward, each movement heavy, as if the gravity of faith itself resists his trespass. Beneath the mechanical rhythm of his breath, he hears other sounds, faint whispers, half prayers recited by unseen voices. The Emperor protects. The Emperor endures. The Emperor sees. The chants twist and merge, not as worship, but as the pulse of existence itself. For the first time in years, Vader feels small, not weak, but finite. He gazes beyond the chamber walls, his mind stretching through the force across the surface of terror. He feels them, the teeming billions in their hive towers and kneeling before shrines, lighting promethium candles in devotion to a god they will never see, each one feeding the same inferno that sustains the man upon the throne. Their belief is not love, it is submission, and yet it endures. For all his strength, all his conquest, Vader never commanded such loyalty. Not even fear could shape this kind of order, and with that realization comes unease, the rarest of emotions within him. Terror does not need another tyrant. It already has one, but its God-King is dying, and the machine that preserves him trembles with every passing century. What then, when the light fades? What fills the void after a god's last breath? Vader cannot answer, and that, perhaps, is what frightens him most. The echo's voice returns, softer now, almost kind. If you seek audience, you must surrender something first. Not your weapon, not your strength, but your purpose. Only those without ambition may stand before the golden throne and survive. Vader tilts his head slightly, the mechanical rasp of his respirator echoing against the marble. Then perhaps, he says, I am already dead. The echo does not reply. It simply steps aside, and the light beyond grows brighter, unbearably bright. It hums with a sound older than creation, the heartbeat of the Astronomicon itself. Somewhere far above, the beacon flickers, its psychic rhythm faltering for just a breath, as if the universe itself has paused to listen. Vader turns toward the brilliance, cloak rippling like shadow beneath the sun. The force thrums violently within him, torn between submission and defiance. For the first time, he feels the Emperor's attention upon him, vast, distant, and piercing. The Astronomicon pulses once more, not in warning but in recognition. The hall of the Scholar Progenium is a cathedral of discipline, vaulted stone and iron, sanctified by the echoes of 1,000 battle hymns. The scent of promethium and incense hangs heavy in the air, burning together into something sharp enough to taste. Beneath banners of forgotten victories stand the Adeptus Astartes, their armor blacker than the void, polished to a mirror's depth where light itself seems reluctant to remain. No chapter sigil marks their no oath parchment drapes from their armor. They are ghosts made flesh, the legion of shadows. Even the air around them feels wrong, heavy with unspoken judgment, as if the Emperor himself withholds recognition of their existence. When Vader enters, the silence deepens. His steps strike the stone like a metronome of inevitability. Each mechanical breath that escapes his vox grill fills the space like a sermon none dare interrupt. The custodians at the entrance stand watch, their golden armor glinting faintly. But this moment belongs to another order, one forged in secrecy, sculpted by necessity, and now confronted by something far beyond comprehension. The Legion watches him with machine-like focus. Their gene-forged eyes track every movement, assessing, measuring, doubting. In them, Vader sees the same hunger that once lived within himself, the need to belong, the fear of faith misplaced. His presence unsettles them. He feels it ripple through the force like static, sharp and restless. These warriors have faced demons, Xenos, traitors beyond reason. Yet what stands before them now is not enemy nor ally. It is something unclassified, a dark convergence of science and spirit, of machinery and myth. He stops before their commander. The Astartes' helm lowers in respect, but not submission. Lord Vader, the Marine, intones through his vox, voice deep as thunder in a tomb. We were told you would lead us, yet none have spoken of where we march, or what foe dares warrant such secrecy. Vader's gaze meets the mirrored visor, and the force hums low and resonant, brushing against the mind beneath. He feels resistance, disciplined, trained to shield against psychic intrusion. But beneath that iron surface is the same fragility all soldiers share, the ache for purpose. His reply comes as more than words. It is a command that trembles through the air. You will march where I command, he says, his tone a perfect balance between silence and storm. And your foe will not be the heretic, the Xenos, nor the demon. It will be doubt. A subtle shift moves through the ranks, not fear, but curiosity. Even through ceramite and discipline, the Astartes feel the pull of something vast and unseen. Vader turns away from the commander and walks between the lines of the legion. The echo of his breath mingles with the faint hum of servos and the soft click of armor plates adjusting. He studies them, one by one, sensing their hearts beneath the layers of steel and gene. Each pulse is steady, each mind sharpened into obedience. Yet beneath that, a whisper, a question unspoken. Why him? Vader stops midway through the formation and lets the silence stretch until it becomes unbearable. Then, without warning, his right hand rises. The air bends around it, shimmering faintly. The nearest Astartes stiffens as his weapon. A massive bolter tears from his grasp and hangs, suspended before Vader's outstretched palm. The force trembles like a living thing, invisible yet absolute. The Marines shift, unsure if what they see is sorcery or technology beyond understanding. The bolter twists slowly in midair, before returning gently to its owner's hands. Vader's voice follows, low and final. Power is nothing without control. Faith is nothing without silence. You will learn both. The commander kneels first, his armor creaking as he lowers himself before this dark figure. One by one, the legion follows. The thud of armored knees striking stone reverberates through the hall like the heartbeat of a newborn empire. Their voices remain still, yet the act speaks louder than any oath. For the first time, the Legion of Shadows bows to a master they do not understand. Vader stands amidst them, and for a fleeting moment he feels something close to acceptance, not loyalty, not love, but acknowledgement. These warriors are like him, forged by pain, purified by obedience, and chained to purpose. The force ripples faintly within them, not as power but as pattern, a disciplined current born of years of indoctrination. They cannot wield it, yet it moves through them nonetheless, shaped by devotion and will. Perhaps, Vader thinks, they are not so different from the Jedi of his past, warriors blinded by faith, made perfect by their own destruction. He turns to face the dais at the far end of the hall, where the Imperial Aquila hangs in silent judgment. His hand drifts to his lightsaber. For a heartbeat, the chamber holds its breath. Then comes the sound, unmistakable, electric, alive. The crimson blade ignites, bathing the kneeling Marines in blood-red light. Reflections dance across their armor like tongues of living flame. This is your symbol, Vader says, voice resonating through metal and mind alike. Not of heresy, of truth. Unity through silence. Strength through discipline. Faith through fire. And as the blade hums, the Legion of Shadows lowers their heads, not in fear, but in recognition of something terrible and divine. The test has begun. The amphitheater beneath, the Imperial Palace, was not meant for human eyes to witness. It was a sanctum of silence and steel, its walls carved from stone older than the Imperium itself, veined with conduits that thrummed faintly with the pulse of the throne above. Incense thickened the air, veiling the chamber in a haze that clung to armor and machine alike. Rows of servitors stood in alcoves, their lifeless visages flickering with faint light as if the jewel about to unfold stirred even the dead. Vader stood at the center of that circle, motionless, monolithic, a shadow against the crimson glow that emanated from his belt. Across from him, Captain Severon advanced. His armor bore the scarring of 100 wars, black ceramite weathered to a dull sheen. Purity seals torn and reattached like old wounds reopened. His voice filtered through his helm's Vox grill, carried the iron cadence of a man who had only ever known obedience. "We fight not to question, Lord Vader," he said, raising his blade in salute, "but to understand what you are." Vader ignited his lightsaber. The sound was a living thing, a hiss that cut through the chant of the incense bearers and echoed off the amphitheater's vaulted dome. The red blade flared against the blue of Severin's power sword, and for a heartbeat, the hall seemed to breathe. Sparks fell like rain as the two weapons met, energy fields crackling, the scent of ozone thickening into something metallic. Almost sweet, the Astartes ringed them in silence, their visors reflecting the duel, two figures, one born of the Emperor's gene forges, the other of an empire long lost to the stars. Severin struck first, his blows heavy and precise, the strength of a demigod behind each swing. Vader parried with effortless control, his movements flowing like water, his form unbroken even as the captain's power sword cleaved through stone and air alike. There was no sound but the hum of energy, no audience but the armored giants who watched in reverence and doubt. To them, this was no mere combat. It was sacrament, a test of faith against something that could not be named. Vader's breathing filled the void between strikes, mechanical and steady, like a machine that knew neither fatigue nor fear. Each exhale was a reminder of his inhumanity, each parry a sermon on discipline. Severin lunged, and for a moment their blades locked. The blue and red light fused into a violent white, searing across the walls like the gaze of a god. "You do not serve the Emperor," Severin growled through gritted teeth, "and yet you command his sons." "I serve purpose," Vader answered, his voice a rumble of storm and sorrow. "As do you." Then he moved a single step, precise and final. The red blade carved through the captain's guard, disarming him in a burst of sparks. Severin fell to one knee, the tip of Vader's saber at his throat. No one breathed. The incense smoke curled around them like a ghost, blurring the line between flesh and faith. Vader deactivated his weapon. The hum died, leaving a silence that was almost holy. "Rise, Captain," he said. "Your strength is proven. Your faith will follow." Severin rose, helmet bowing, his voice subdued but clear. "Then we serve." A murmur moved through the ranks, not of rebellion, but of revelation. They had witnessed power without prayer, control without benediction. To the Legion of Shadows, this man was not heretic nor Messiah, but something far more dangerous, a master who demanded no worship, only perfection. Yet even as unity took root, Vader's senses brushed against a presence beyond the mortal, cold, watching. The force trembled in the air like the first whisper of a storm. He turned his gaze toward the high archway where no light reached, where the incense thickened into a shape almost human. Was it the Inquisition, cloaked in their endless suspicion, or the silent awareness of the Emperor himself, bound upon his throne, reaching through the immaterium to weigh this intruder's soul? No answer came. Only the faint thrum of distant machinery, the living arteries of terror, pulsing beneath his boots like the heartbeat of a dying god, when the Astartes saluted him with the sign of the Aquila. Vader inclined his head, an acknowledgement of discipline, not devotion. Yet beneath that moment of unity, unease rippled unseen. In the Imperium, nothing was freely given. Every victory had a price, every alliance a hidden blade, and somewhere beyond those stone walls, something ancient stirred, as if the Emperor's realm had just taken notice of a shadow it could not name. The fortress monastery was alive in a way no machine should be. It breathed through the walls, a low hum of power conduits and distant forges, the soft murmur of binary prayers whispered by robed tech adepts. Incense hung thick in the corridors, masking the Thames of promethium and oil, though Vader could taste both beneath the sweetness. Every step he took echoed through halls carved with the sigils of the Omnissiah and the Imperial Aquila, symbols of faith and dominion intertwined so tightly that even the stones seemed to worship. The Legion of Shadows moved with ritual precision, their actions synchronized not by command, but by devotion. To watch them was to see belief made flesh. Vader studied them in silence, his presence alien, mechanical, unblessed, drew glances that lingered too long. Prayers murmured a little louder. They feared him as they revered him, uncertain whether he was a servant of the Emperor or something far older. From the shadows, he observed a warrior kneel before his armor, reciting litanies as he anointed each plate with sacred oil. Another whispered to his bolter as if coaxing a soul from slumber. When a servitor passed, its human mouth stitched into permanent supplication. Vader's mechanical breathing drowned the sound of its muttered data. To these men, faith was the machine. To him, the machine was merely a tool. He tried to understand it, this worship that replaced will, the idea that strength came not from mastery, but surrender. When he spoke to Severin of it, the captain's response was simple, almost serene. "We fight not for victory, my lord, but for his memory. Every strike, every breath, honors the throne." "The throne does not breathe," Vader replied. "It consumes." Severin had smiled beneath his helm. "Then we are its chosen offering." That exchange lingered with him. In his galaxy, power was seized through conflict, its cost measured in the ruin of others. But here, power was sanctified by belief, a unity built upon obedience. Vader found it paradoxical, even maddening. Yet, somewhere within that rigid devotion, he sensed purpose. Not weakness, but order. These warriors were bound to something greater than themselves, and perhaps that was why they endured when empires fell. Still, the force within him recoiled at the thought. It was not faith that had sustained him. It was will, the refusal to yield. And yet, as he watched a line of Astartes chant the canticles of the their voices rising like a storm of prayer beneath the high-vaulted dome, he could not deny the strength that radiated from their unity. It was different, but undeniable. Severin began to visit him more often. The silence between them gradually replaced by words, rare measured, but sincere. They spoke of battle, of discipline, of the cost of command. Severin saw in Vader a reflection of something he could not name. Vader, in turn, saw in Severin a mind not entirely chained by doctrine. Theirs was not friendship, but respect, the kind forged only in struggle. Then came the whispers. The adepts of the Adeptus Mechanicus had begun their murmured liturgies in secret, their binary hymns shifting tone when Vader entered the chamber. Rumors spread like smoke through the monastery. The Emperor had seen, or perhaps, more dangerously, he had felt, at first. Vader dismissed it as superstition, the endless mutterings of zealots who saw divine will in every flicker of light. But when the air itself began to hum differently, when the power lines throbbed with a rhythm too deliberate to be random, even he could not ignore it. The force stirred uneasily within him, whispering of eyes unseen and judgment vast as the void. It was Severin who brought the news. "A summons has come from the palace," he said, his voice heavy with reverence. "The Emperor demands your presence." For a moment, the fortress seemed to still. Even the servitors ceased their chanting, their mechanical limbs pausing mid-motion. Vader turned, the mechanical rasp of his breathing filling the silence. The word summons carried weight here, not an invitation, but an imperial decree wrapped in gold and fear. He said nothing, only reached for his cloak and turned toward the great doors of the assembly hall, where the legion had already gathered. Rows upon rows of black-armored giants stood at attention, the red glow of votive candles flickering across their armor. As Vader approached, the distant sound of boots, heavy, deliberate, echoed through the corridor beyond. Then came the shimmer of gold. A figure entered, a custodian of the Adeptus Custodes. Radiant and terrible, his armor reflecting the light of the chamber like a mirror of the Emperor's own glory. Upon his chest gleamed the sigil of the golden throne. He did not bow. He did not speak, not at first. Only extended a sealed scroll, its wax pressed with the mark of the Master of Mankind. The legion knelt as one. Vader did not. The air between them vibrated with silent defiance, with faith and doubt and something far older than either. The custodian met his gaze, unblinking. "You are called to the throne," he said. The incense burned lower. The lights dimmed. And for the first time since stepping upon Terra, Vader felt the weight of something he could not command, a presence vast enough to challenge his very soul. The void was alive with war. Emerald fire streaked across the stars as orc warhulks tore through the darkness, their jagged silhouettes blotting out entire constellations. Vox traffic filled the command deck, bursts of static, prayers, screams, and laughter twisted into one cacophony of chaos. The Legion of Shadows held formation amid that roaring abyss, their black-armored strike cruisers cutting through the void like spectral knives. Each vessel moved with eerie precision, its hull etched with runes of silence, its engines singing binary hymns to the machine god. Vader stood at the center of the command deck, a dark monolith among motion. His respirator filled the air with the rhythm of inevitability, mechanical and calm. Around him, the bridge crew chanted through their fear, reciting litanies of targeting and ignition as though their prayers could steady the hand of fate. They did not look to him for comfort. They looked to him for order. He gave it not with shouts, but with the weight of presence alone. Each syllable that left his vox grill was absolute, fire. The word rolled through the command deck like thunder. Macro cannons roared, and the first void torpedoes streaked outward in trails of red and gold. The impact was instant, devastating orc cruisers cracked open, spilling green flame and scrap metal into the stars. Fragments of entire moons drifted past like bones in the tide. Still, the greenskin horde advanced, laughing through the carnage, their ships vomiting rockets and plasma bolts in every direction. Vader did not flinch. To him, battle was not chaos, it was clarity. Every death, every detonation, every scream through the Vox was part of a larger rhythm, one that he could feel through the Force. It pulsed through him like a current, guiding each decision before thought could reach it. Adjust bearing, concentrate fire, hold formation. His commands were measured, surgical. He did not rage. He conducted. The Legion fought like extensions of his will. Boarding torpedoes launched from their strike cruisers, crashing into orc hulls with perfect precision. The Astartes, within his Legion of Shadows, emerged into the carnage, chainswords humming, bolters roaring in bursts of sanctified fury. Their war cries were not shouts but psalms. Through the hololithic display, Vader watched their advance as though observing a living sermon, a ballet of discipline against madness. And yet, beneath the triumph, something stirred as the final Orc cruiser detonated. Its death throes scattering wreckage across the void. A silence followed that was too complete. It pressed against the hull, deeper than any sensor reading could explain. The stars themselves seemed to dim. Vader's breathing grew louder, each rasp echoing in the sudden stillness. He closed his eyes and felt it, not the Force as he knew it, not the current of life and death, nor the weight of destiny. This was different, older, hungrier. The warp shivered beneath his awareness, as though something vast had turned its gaze toward him. Across the deck, the astropath screamed, her body convulsed, the golden sigil of the Astronomicon flaring in her blind eyes. Vox cables snapped from their sockets as static flooded every channel. He watches. She wailed, voice tearing through metal and air alike. He sees you. Then silence again. The crew stared in horror. Vader did not move. The Force, his ally, his curse, recoiled within him like a creature sensing a predator in the dark. The Emperor's light, the Astronomicon that guided humanity across the stars, pulsed once, bright enough to turn the void itself into gold, and then dimmed to embers. Severon approached, his armor scorched from the void battle. "My lord," he said, his voice low through the helm's vox. "The Orcs are destroyed, but the navigator reports interference." The Astronomicon wavers. The machine spirits whisper of anomalies in the immaterium. Vader's gaze turned toward the viewport, where the wreckage of the Orc fleet drifted in slow, burning silence. He said nothing for several breaths. "It is not the Orcs," he finally replied. "Something else stirs. Something beyond." Severin hesitated. The warp, perhaps. A curse. A demon. Vader raised a hand. No. His mechanical voice was quieter now, yet sharper than any blade. "This is not the madness of demons. It is awareness. Something knows me." Beyond the viewport, the void rippled, just once, like a dark sea, disturbed by something immense beneath its surface. The crew fell to their knees, whispering prayers to the throne. But Vader did not pray. He stood motionless, the reflection of dying stars burning across the black of his helmet. For the first time since entering this galaxy, the Force did not obey him. It watched him, and in that moment he understood the cost of standing between faith and power. The world they had taken was still bleeding when the legion of shadows gathered upon its surface. Blackened craters smoked under a sky bruised violet by lingering ion storms, and the air stank of promethium and burnt flesh. The Astartes moved among the wreckage with ritual precision, their armor caked in soot and ash, their voices rising in low, metallic hymns through their vox grills. Each broken weapon was lifted like a sacred relic. Each corpse was arranged beneath the twin-headed Aquila. What had been a battlefield was becoming a cathedral. To them, war was not chaos. It was devotion rendered in fire and blood. Vader stood apart, his silhouette framed against the glow of burning manufactoria, his armor alien even among demigods hissed with heat. Beneath the mechanical rhythm of his respirator, his thoughts moved like a slow tide. The Astartes worshipped through discipline. He commanded through domination. To them, faith was an offering. To him, faith was an illusion. Yet, as their chants deepened, vibrating the ground beneath his boots, he felt something stir, not reverence, but recognition. Power drawn from belief, raw and unrefined, thick as smoke in the air. The Force responded, subtle, curious. It did not reject their worship. It consumed it. Still, doubt had begun to whisper among the ranks. They had seen his weapon, that unnatural crimson blade, forged in a shape no forge world claimed. They had felt the invisible pressure when he grew angry, the suffocating presence that made even their genetically perfected hearts race. Some called it sorcery, others called it heresy. And in the quiet hours, when the chanting faded and only the wind howled through the ruins, they wondered, was the Dark Lord truly chosen by the Emperor, or something else entirely? The ecclesiarchy arrived soon after. Their transports descended like blackened doves, bearing priests robed in gold-threaded crimson. Their words were honeyed, their smiles sharp. They spoke of guidance, of piety, of tending the souls of those who fought. But Vader saw through the pretense. He had seen it before, the soft power of clerics disguised as counsel, their sermons a weapon meant to probe weakness. He watched as one priest placed a hand upon the pauldron of a kneeling Astartes, murmuring benedictions. The warrior's gaze flickered between the robed man and his silent commander. Vader said nothing, but within his helm, his jaw tightened. The Force trembled around him, sensing tension, feeding upon it. Then the sky tore open again. A sound like a wounded god split the horizon, the roar of orc engines, crude and furious, returning in one final wave of madness. Their warlord, half mechanical and half beast, came leading them, a hulking brute whose armor bore the sigils of countless conquered worlds. The Astartes rallied instinctively, bolters raised, litanies spilling from their lips. The priests began to shout prayers, invoking the Emperor's wrath. But Vader did not pray. He moved. His ignition shattered the chanting. A single snap hiss of scarlet fire cut through the storm. The orcs saw it first, that unnatural blade burning brighter than the wreckage, and they hesitated. Then he charged. He was fury incarnate. His saber tore through greenskin ranks, each stroke a precise annihilation. The Force rippled outward, unseen but felt, ripping armor plates from bodies, shattering crude weapons into dust. He moved like the storm itself, an unholy hymn of destruction. Around him, the Astartes joined in the slaughter, but even they fell silent in awe between bursts of gunfire. Here faith was irrelevant. Here only willpower ruled. And Vader's will was absolute. The orc warlord bellowed and swung a chain axe the size of a man. Vader caught it mid-swing with an open hand, the Force crackling invisibly, and wrenched it free, sending the brute staggering. With a low growl, he drove his saber through its heart, the blade burning until it split armor, flesh, and bone alike. The body collapsed with a sound like collapsing metal, and then silence. Only the breathing remained, that mechanical rasp echoing across the dead field. When it was over, the priests were gone. The Astartes stood motionless, watching him. In their eyes was no longer doubt, only something else, a mixture of reverence and fear. Their faith had found a new shape, though none would name it aloud. Vader stood among the burning ruins, smoke coiling round his armor like incense. The sky above was a swirl of ash and crimson, and through it, faintly, he heard something that was not sound, a whisper threading through the static of the VOX, through the dead wind itself. It spoke his name, not as the Astartes did, but as something older, deeper, remembering him. The warp was listening. Sleep would not come. Not for him, not for the creature who once dreamed of peace and woke to eternal war. Within the dark chambers of his flagship, the Obsidian Rain, Lord Vader sat in silence. the only sound his own mechanical breathing echoing through the steel cathedral of his quarters. The hum of the ship's engines beneath his boots was steady, like the slow heartbeat of a dying god. Beyond the armored glass, the stars stretched endless and indifferent. Yet somewhere between them, unseen but always near, the warp stirred, its colors writhing just beyond mortal perception. Like oil over deep water, he closed his eyes and reached outward through the force. It should have been serenity. That was the promise of mastery. Yet what met him was not peace. It was laughter. Not the guttural roar of orcs or the hollow mockery of men, but a sound vast and cruel, rippling through the immaterium like thunder under water. It was the laughter of something ancient, something that knew him. The visions came without warning. They bloomed behind his eyelids like infection. A throne made of skulls stacked to the void, seas of rotting flesh bubbling under the weight of despair, serpents coiled in gold and shadow, whispering of pleasure that devours the will, shapes shifting in fire and filth, mocking the very idea of order. He saw them not as gods, but as reflections of every emotion humanity had ever surrendered to: rage, lust, pride, fear. He understood then. They did not create these emotions, they fed upon them. Parasites clothed as divinity, the force twisted beneath their influence. Its familiar current warped into something alien. For a moment he felt himself pulled toward them, as if the very essence of his power was an offering upon their altar. Rage had fueled him. Pain had shaped him. Devotion, twisted, burning devotion, had defined his every act. And these beings thrived on exactly that. Their power was born from the same wounds that sustained his strength. A low growl rumbled from within his chest. "I am no one's servant," he whispered, his voice a machine-filtered snarl through the Vox grill. The words fell like lead in the still air, but the laughter did not fade. It rolled on, rising and falling with a terrible rhythm, as if mocking the futility of defiance itself. He opened his eyes. The chamber lights flickered, briefly drowned by a pulse of violet energy from beyond the hull. Even the obsidian rain seemed to shudder. He could sense his crew in distant corridors, the disciplined fear of the Astartes, the silent unease of the servitors, the murmured prayers of mortals clinging to the Emperor's mercy. All of them, consciously or not, feeding the same hunger he had just witnessed in the dark. Every act of faith, every whisper of terror, all fuel for the things that laughed. He rose from meditation, the air heavy with ozone and dread. His cape brushed the deck like a funeral shroud as he moved toward the viewport. Beyond, the warp shimmered faintly, like an open wound upon the stars. Somewhere, deep within its tides, he could feel them watching, not with eyes, but with understanding, as though they recognized in him a mirror, a being born from rage, sustained by loss, sustained by the lie that purpose could redeem suffering. The question haunted him like breath beneath a mask. Was he any different from them? The force responded, coiling around him, alive with tension. He felt its duality, the light still buried deep within, suffocating under the shadow he had become. He had once believed in destiny, in the balance of power. Now, standing before the endless void, he felt only conflict. Perhaps that was the true nature of existence, to struggle against what seeks to define you, even when that enemy wears your own face. A tremor rippled through the ship. The obsidian rain had entered the Astronomican's reach. A column of divine radiance cut through the warp like a blade, pure and blinding, burning away the crawling shadows. Vader shielded his eyes, sensors flickering. And in that brilliance, he felt something impossible, the Emperor's light, pulsing with unnatural strength, as if aware of what he had seen. The laughter fell silent. The warp recoiled. He stood there, bathed in the light that pierced even his armor's black. And for a moment, a heartbeat stretched across eternity. He felt something close to warning. The Emperor's radiance did not embrace him. It judged him. He turned away, breath hissing, and the stars beyond Terra's path beckoned once more. The true war, he realized, was not out there in the void, not in the armies, nor in the gods that mocked. It was within the soul that dares to command power, and not be consumed by it. The air inside the imperial palace is a weight that no armor can bear. It presses against the lungs, thick with the scent of burning oils and sanctified ash. The vaulted corridors echo with the chant of 1,000 robed adepts, their voices rising and falling in endless praise of a god who does not answer. Vader moves through them in silence, his heavy steps ringing like a funeral march upon marble older than memory. Statues of saints and martyrs tower over him, their stone eyes blind to all but eternity. The light filtering through the stained adamantium windows paints the hall in shifting gold and crimson, the colors of sacrifice. He says nothing. The force hums faintly around him, but even it seems muted here, swallowed by the vast psychic gravity of Terra itself. As he ascends the final stairway, the air changes. It is no longer merely heavy. It vibrates. The sound of it thrums against the inside of his helmet, a constant low-frequency murmur like distant thunder. He realizes it is not sound at all, but thought, the collective psychic noise of billions praying at once. Their devotion has form, pressure, and taste. It fills the lungs like smoke, metallic and hot. Each breath feels stolen from the mouth of a dying god. At the summit, the corridor opens into a vast chamber lit by the impossible glow of the ash. It burns above the golden throne like a false sun, its light cutting through the warp itself, guiding ships across the void. Even through the armor's filters, Vader can feel its radiance searing the air, divine, mechanical, and monstrous. The throne dominates everything. It is less a seat than an altar of machines, its surface alive with cables that pulse like veins. Servo skulls drift through the air, trailing parchment inscribed with endless litanies. The hum of the machinery is not rhythm. It is breath, the slow, labored respiration of eternity itself. He walks closer, his cape dragging across the polished floor. The heat from the throne intensifies. He can taste the ozone, the burning oil, the sterile scent of sanctified metal. And beneath it all, faint but unmistakable, the psychic undertone of suffering. The force shudders around him, unable to define what it touches. There is no living presence here, no soul, no heartbeat, and yet everything lives. He kneels. The act feels wrong, alien. Kneeling was something done before a master, before a power that demanded submission. But this is not a god to kneel to. The thing upon the golden throne is both alive and dead, divinity locked in torment. He can sense fragments of the Emperor's consciousness scattered through the immaterial plane, echoes of thought like shards of broken glass. A whisper of will, still burning after 10,000 years. There is no voice, no command, only the endless hum of the machine that feeds on divinity to sustain the light of mankind. Vader bows his head, though not in reverence. In understanding, this is no throne of victory. It is a tomb, a monument not to triumph, but but to duty stretched past all sanity. The emperor does not rule from here, he endures. His existence is not life, but function. He is the lighthouse and the prisoner of his own design. Vader's mechanical breathing deepens, distorted slightly by the chamber's resonance. He feels something within him crack, not armor, not flesh, but conviction. This is what power becomes when it forgets its purpose. Not freedom, not order, only endurance, only silence. For a moment, he wonders if the Emperor still dreams, if he remembers the warmth of sunlight on Terra before it became a fortress of gold and sorrow, if he mourns what his Imperium has become, a cathedral built on fear and blind faith. Vader understands too well. Once, he too believed power could impose peace. Once, he too thought sacrifice would grant control. And now, standing before the throne, he sees the truth laid bare. Power does not save. It consumes. A low tremor runs through the chamber. The light of the Astronomicon flickers, faint but deliberate. He looks up. The flame that has burned for millennia seems to shudder, as if caught by a presence unseen. The air around him sharpens, metallic, almost electric. His senses register nothing, yet the force stirs cautious, alert. The silence deepens, no longer empty but aware. Something watches through the light. Vader does not move. The hum of the throne steadies once more, though now it feels like breath held, waiting. His reflection glimmers faintly upon the golden surface, black against brilliance, shadow against godhood. To figures bound by machines, by destiny, by the illusion of control. He turns his gaze downward, but the awareness lingers. It is not hostility. It is curiosity, recognition. The silence of the throne has become sentient, and in that silence, he knows the Emperor's eyes, or whatever remains of them, are upon him. The Hall of Echoes is a cathedral of memory, vast, lightless, and alive with the murmurs of the past. Its walls are not stone, but layers of psychic residue, centuries deep, preserved like insects in amber. Every word ever spoken in reverence to the Emperor lingers here, repeating in soft, fractured tones that weave into a chorus both divine and unbearable. Vader walks through it in silence, his footfalls swallowed by the weight of history. The air hums with low-frequency vibrations, like a heartbeat beneath the marble, the pulse of a world worshipping itself. Even the air smells different here. Old incense, mixed with the faint tank of blood, long dried into ritual. The Adeptus Custodes stand at the periphery, their golden armor reflecting the dim light in muted halos. They do not speak. They do not move. Yet Vader feels their unease, though it is buried beneath layers of discipline older than empires. To them, he is anomaly incarnate, a being of impossible nature, permitted within the holiest chamber, not by command, but by curiosity. Even they dare not question why. He moves deeper, his breathing steady and mechanical, the rasp of it merging with the distant drone of the palace's life-sustaining machinery. His mind stretches outward, seeking the familiar rhythm of the Force. But what greets him is wrong. The energy here is not the balanced current he once commanded, nor the chaotic storm he once served. It is stillness, faith solidified into substance, belief so absolute it has altered the very weave of reality. The Force bends beneath it, reshaped into something colder, heavier, almost inert. He extends a hand toward one of the walls. For a moment, the surface ripples like disturbed water, and voices whisper through the air, fragments of ancient devotion. Ave Imperator, The light of man, the flame that never dies. The echoes swirl around him, charged with emotion so dense it presses against his thoughts. He pulls his hand back. The sensation lingers, like static crawling beneath his glove. It isn't merely memory, it is the psychic fossilization of belief itself. The realization comes slowly, then all at once. This is not the Force as he understands it. It is not light or dark. It is faith made manifest, submission given form, power drawn not from will, but surrender. The Imperium does not wield the Force. It worships it. Every chant, every ritual, every death in the Emperor's name feeds the same cosmic cycle he once tried to master. It horrifies him. To bend to the Force was a path of balance. To bend the Force to one's will was corruption. But to become the object of worship, that is damnation disguised as eternity. He looks upward. The ceiling of the hall stretches beyond sight, vanishing into a haze of gold and shadow. He can feel the Emperor's silence radiating from above, vast and deliberate. It is not absence. It is containment. He understands now, if the Emperor were to truly speak, if the full magnitude of his will were unleashed, it would tear through the materium itself. Words from such a being would not be sound, but cataclysm. His silence is mercy, or perhaps guilt. Vader stops before a vast mural carved into the far wall, an image of the Emperor at the height of the Great Crusade. The craftsmanship is flawless, but what draws him is not the art, it is the energy. The psychic imprint radiates pride, triumph, divinity. But beneath it, faint as breath, he feels sorrow, a fracture hidden beneath perfection. The Emperor was not born a god. He was made into one by the belief of others, by the machinery that now sustains him, by the fear of mankind itself. Vader's reflection shimmers faintly across the mural's golden surface, distorted by the light. The realization cuts deep. This is what he might have become, what he did become, in another life. A creature bound to its own legend, trapped by the weight of belief. He sees himself in that stillness, and for the first time in many years, something like pity stirs within him. Not for the Emperor alone, but for all who mistake power for purpose. The Force inside him trembles, not in conflict, but in warning. It senses something shifting. Somewhere beyond the golden stillness, in the uncharted depths of the warp, something ancient turns its gaze toward him. It is not the Emperor. It is something older, something curious. Its whisper threads through the silence like a knife through silk, faint, serpentine, almost tender. He freezes. The air chills. The light of the mural flickers, and for a heartbeat, the golden visage of the Emperor seems to smile, not benevolently, but knowingly, from the void beyond faith. The whisper comes again, a voice that is not divine, not human. We see you. Beneath the throne, the air grows heavy, a pressure that feels alive, pressing against flesh and soul alike. Vader descends deeper, guided by that spectral whisper threading through the labyrinth of catacombs like a serpent of sound. The passage narrows, its walls carved with runes older than the Imperium, older, perhaps, than the Emperor himself. They hum faintly as he passes, each sigil pulsing with residual faith, desperate prayers fossilized in psychic energy. The smell of promethium mingles with dust and sanctified oil, and the heat of the golden throne above bleeds faintly into the stone, turning the air into something like breath, the breath of a slumbering god. Vader can almost hear it, slow, endless, suffocating. When the whisper returns, It no longer hides behind words. It becomes emotion, cold curiosity, edged with sorrow. Do you still seek purpose, shadow of another age? The voice slides across his mind like the echo of the dark side, but twisted, stretched through faith until it no longer remembers itself. Vader's hand tightens on his lightsaber, its crimson blade spilling light across the bones of saints entombed along the corridor. Their skulls glimmer faintly, hollow eyes reflecting the red as though watching. Judging, he senses the warp's touch now, not as chaos, but as reflection. The Force here has been devoured, repurposed, forced into servitude to fuel belief. And in that violation, Vader sees himself. Once, he too enslaved power. Once, he too bent destiny to his will and called it order. The realization burns deeper than any blade. He whispers beneath his breath, half prayer, half curse, "Is this what remains of power when faith takes its throne?" The whisper grows bolder. It shows him visions, cities of iron collapsing beneath banners of gold, billions chanting the Emperor's name as their bodies turn to ash, a tide of worship that feeds a fire no god can control. And above it all, the Emperor's hollow gaze, neither mercy nor hatred, only endurance. A prisoner of his own divinity, bound to the golden throne so that others may call him God. The vision trembles, the catacombs quaking with the resonance of that truth. Dust falls from the ceiling like dying stars. Vader ignites his saber again, and the hum cuts through the chanting that bleeds from the stones. He steps forward, deeper still, until the tunnel opens into a vast chamber, circular, cathedral-like, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center floats a mirror of black glass, suspended by invisible force. Its surface ripples with energy, showing glimpses of faces, warriors, kings, traitors, martyrs, all bearing the same eyes. His eyes, the whisper coils behind him, now soft, almost reverent. Every god must face his reflection. He approaches. The mirror's surface trembles, and the reflection that stares back is not armored, it is human. Scarred, weary. Anakin Skywalker? For a moment, the silence between them is unbearable. The air seems to fold inward, pressing against his chest until he cannot breathe. Then the reflection speaks, not through sound, but through memory. You wanted peace. You found control. You called it destiny. Vader reaches for the mirror, but the instant his gauntlet touches the surface, it liquefies into shadow. The darkness wraps around his arm, dragging at him like the gravity of a dying star. He resists, the force thrumming through his veins. But this is no ordinary struggle. It is his own soul pulling him apart, the remnants of light and dark clawing for dominion. Sparks of red and gold swirl through the blackness, reflections of saber and throne, will and faith. Then, with a sound like a heart breaking, the mirror shatters. Fragments drift upward, each shard holding an image, a burning temple, a broken mask, a dying god. Vader drops to one knee, the echo of the explosion fading into the distant hum of the throne above. The whisper is gone. The silence that follows feels infinite. For the first time since Mustafar, he feels ... free. But freedom in the Imperium is not a gift, it is a heresy. Somewhere far above, within the throne room itself, alarms begin to sound. The custodians stir. The Emperor's psychic gaze flickers faint, almost questioning. In the catacombs, Vader rises, the red glow of his saber dimming into the dark. He looks toward the passage he came from, then to the abyss beyond the broken mirror. Some say he ascended once more, reborn as the Emperor's silent executioner, the unseen blade that carried divine wrath. Others believe he stepped into that void, seeking a realm untouched by gods or masters. None can say which is true, only that in the centuries that followed, whispers spread through the stars of a black-armored figure who walked among the lost, neither servant nor savior, the one they called the Black Angel.